The first ship didn't explode. It folded inward like something had grabbed it from the inside and crushed it into a point of light. And in the silence that followed, every species in the council chamber turned to the humans with the same terrified question in their eyes. What had they just woken up? If stories like this get under your skin, subscribe, like the video, and tell me where you're watching from before we begin. Because this one doesn't just end with a war. It ends with a truth nobody in the galaxy was ready to survive. 3 minutes earlier, Ambassador Ilara Voss had been standing beneath the glass dome of the Concord chamber, staring at Earth. From orbit, it looked harmless. Blue, white, soft. A world made for oceans, music, grief, gardens, children. A world the galaxy had spent 20 years underestimating. Outside the dome, 47 Allied banners floated in ceremonial gravity. Inside, representatives from 9 star systems sat in curved tiers, their jeweled robes and scaled armor reflecting the pale light of Earth below. The emergency session had been called because the Terran Dominion had crossed the Perseus Expanse 6 days ahead of projection. No one thought they would come this fast. No one thought they would come straight for Earth. A 7-foot Vare delegate with silver eyes clicked his jaw and looked down at Ilara. "You asked for allies," he said. "We came to discuss terms. Instead, we find the Dominion already in your sky." Ilara kept her hands clasped behind her back so they wouldn't shake. "We asked for unity," she corrected. "There's a difference." A few quiet laughs moved through the chamber. Not kind laughs. The kind that told you everyone already believed the funeral had started. At the highest dais, Chancellor Ithis of the Concord lifted a thin hand. "Human Ambassador, our scouts report 6 Dominion carrier swarms, 1 dreadnought cluster, and multiple gravity tomb vessels approaching your moon. Your planetary navy is modest." That word. Modest. As if Earth's dead had been budgeted. As if modest explained the cemeteries from Shanghai to Lagos to Buenos Aires after the border sieges. As if modest covered the years humanity spent burying soldiers in silence while the rest of the galaxy called them emotional, impulsive, too divided to matter. Ilara looked through the dome again. Beyond Earth, the black between stars had started to move. Not ships. A wall. A swarm so vast it changed the shape of darkness. The chamber doors hissed open behind her. A human officer stumbled in, bleeding from the temple, his breath tearing in his throat. "Ambassador," he gasped, "the lunar defense ring is gone." The room froze. Ilara turned. "Gone?" He swallowed. Disabled from inside. A pulse of cold shot through her spine. Inside. Betrayal always arrived faster than invasion. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices. "Impossible! Your systems were compromised? This is why pre-civilized militaries cannot govern shared space." Ilara barely heard them. Her wrist console vibrated once. Private channel. Home. She opened it. A grainy image filled her screen. Her younger brother, Micah, standing in the emergency corridor of New Rotterdam Arcology, one arm around a little girl with braids and blood on her cheek. Ilara's niece, Lonnie, 12 years old. Micah's face was gray with dust. Behind him, people were running. "Ellie," he said, breathless. They hit the North Shield. We're moving everyone underground. Lonnie's okay. Listen to me." A scream in the background. The camera jolted. Lonnie looked straight into the screen. "Aunt Ellie? Are the aliens here?" Ilara opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Micah's eyes locked onto hers. He didn't say, "Don't panic." He didn't say, "We'll be fine." He knew better. He only said, very quietly, "If they refuse to help, you do what Dad told you." The transmission cut. Ilara stood very still. Around her, the council kept arguing over fleet positioning, liability, evacuation corridors, projected losses. Their words blended into something ugly and polished and cowardly. "Dad told you." A phrase she had spent 11 years trying not to hear. Because General Adrian Voss had died with half the galaxy calling him a paranoid butcher and the other half calling him a relic. Because he'd once stood in this same chamber and said, "If Earth is cornered, we will not ask twice." Because after that speech, the Concord sanctioned him, stripped his command, and forced him into retirement. 6 months later, he was found dead in a hospital bed after what officials called a stress-induced cardiac collapse. Ilara had never believed that story. Not once. Chancellor Ithis spoke over the chaos. "We must be rational. If Earth falls, the Concord can preserve core worlds by retreating to the Helix Gate. We cannot sacrifice the Union for a single member species." There it was, said plainly. Earth was expendable. Ilara slowly lifted her head. "You're leaving us." "We are preserving civilization." "No," she said, louder now. "You're leaving us." The Ver delegate sneered. "Humanity sought allies because humanity cannot win alone." Something in Ilara's face changed. Not rage, something colder, something older. "My father used to say the galaxy made one mistake with our species," she said. "You saw how hard we loved each other, and mistook that for weakness." The Ver delegate opened his mouth to answer. That was when the first ship folded inward. Outside the dome, one of the Dominion Vanguard cruisers stopped in motion, crumpled like a paper toy in a giant invisible fist, and vanished in a starburst of white fire. The chamber fell into total silence. Then another cruiser snapped in half, then another. All across the darkness, shock waves rippled through the invading formation. No missiles, no visible projectiles, no fleet intercept. Just impossible destruction. A Concord officer at the sensor rail shouted, "Unknown weapon signature!" "From where?" "I don't know." Another voice, "Tracking origin! Tracking!" The officer went pale. "Origin confirmed," he whispered. Everyone turned. He stared at the data as if it were a death sentence. "Earth." The chamber burst into terrified noise again. "That's not possible. Humans don't possess. They declared no such arsenal." Ilara wasn't listening. Her console vibrated a second time. Not from Earth, from a dead channel. Her father's military encryption. Her breath caught. She pressed accept. The hologram that appeared above her wrist was old, flickering, recorded in dim light. Adrian Voss looked older than she remembered. Tired. A face built by sleepless nights and hard choices. His uniform was unmarked. No rank, no medals. Just the man. "Ilara," he said, and for a second she forgot how to breathe. If you're seeing this, then it means they pushed us past the line. Her eyes burned. Around her, alarms wailed. Outside, another carrier swarm disappeared in a flare. Adrian continued, voice steady. I hoped you never would. She could hear distant machinery behind him, massive, ancient. The Concorde will hesitate. Some will betray you. Some will dress fear up as wisdom. And some will wait until Earth bleeds, then arrive to claim what remains in the name of order. Ilara's hand tightened around the console. Because that wasn't a prediction. It was a memory. He looked into the recording as if he could see her now. If civilian shields fall in a populated zone, authorization passes to you. A coded string flashed across the hologram. Her heart stopped. Arsenal release authority. Level Omega. No one outside the bloodline should have had that. No one. Dad, she whispered. Adrian's expression softened, and that made it worse. The Arsenal was never built because humanity hates, he said. It was built because we remember. The hologram shifted, showing a schematic that made Ilara's knees weaken. The Moon, Mars orbitals, Atlantic trench platforms, solar lens arrays hidden in the corona shadow, asteroid belts packed with dormant mass drivers disguised as mining colonies. Hundreds of signatures, no, thousands. Not a fleet, a system. The entire solar system had been weaponized. Quietly, patiently, for decades. Adrian spoke over the images. We dismantled our pride and buried our teeth. We let them call us small. We let them measure the wrong things. Because if the day ever came when Earth had to open its arsenal, then anything less than absolute surprise would mean extinction. Ilara's stomach turned. Her father had told the truth, the whole time. He hadn't been mad. He had been preparing. The hologram dimmed for a second, then returned with a hesitation that felt almost human. Ilara, if Lonnie is alive when this begins, keep her away from the sky. The recording ended. Ilara stared at the empty air. Lonnie. He'd made this years ago, before he died, before Micah even told the family his daughter's name at the naming dinner. Unless... A realization hit her so hard she almost staggered. Her father had known he wouldn't live to see this. He hadn't predicted a war. He had predicted his own death. Ambassador? Chancellor Ithis called sharply. What have you done? Ilara looked up slowly. She said. Nothing yet. More Dominion ships died outside the dome, but now the retaliation came. A gravity tomb vessel angled toward Earth and released a dark sphere the size of a city. Every screen in the chamber lit with warning red. Projected impact, Atlantic corridor. Population density, catastrophic. Ilara's blood went cold. Micah and Lonnie were in New Rotterdam. Atlantic corridor. No, she whispered. The dark sphere fell through the atmosphere like a second moon. Concorde officers shouted over one another. Dominion broadcasts flooded every channel. One face took over the central chamber screen. The Dominion warlord Kale Varun, his pale eyes carved from arrogance and contempt. People of Earth, he said, almost smiling. Your allies have already stepped back. Surrender your command infrastructure, and only one city will be taken as example. One city. The casual cruelty of that landed harder than any explosion. Ilara stepped forward into the center ring. "Patch me through," Chancellor Ithis snapped. "You are no longer controlling this diplomatic sequence." Ilara turned on him so fast even the guards flinched. "Patch me through." Something in her voice made the technician obey. Kale Varun's face enlarged. He looked directly at her. "Ah, a human who stayed." "I'm going to give you one chance," Ilara said. The entire chamber stared. The warlord actually laughed. "Your species came begging for allies." "No," she said. "We came offering peace." His smile thinned. "That offer is dead." Ilara looked at the dark sphere dropping toward the Atlantic, then back at him. "So are you." She entered the Omega code. Nothing happened. For one horrifying second, nothing happened at all. Then Earth answered. The Atlantic opened. Not metaphorically, not poetically. The ocean itself split in two along a glowing line that ran thousands of miles, steam roaring into the atmosphere as armored platforms rose from the trench like black continents surfacing from the grave. Their hulls were scarred, enormous, old enough to have been built by hands that expected never to be thanked. Along the lunar far side, crater walls collapsed inward, revealing rail cannons buried beneath regolith and time. Mars' dead moons ignited. Solar mirrors rotated into lethal alignment. And in the asteroid belt, thousands of civilian mining stations unfolded like waking predators. The dark sphere above the Atlantic vanished in a beam of white so violent it left a scar in the clouds. Every species in the chamber recoiled. One of the Ver delegates actually dropped to his knees. On screen, Kale Varun stopped smiling. "What," he said quietly, "is this?" Ilara looked him in the eye. "Human restraint." The next 10 minutes changed galactic history. Dominion carriers were gutted by relativistic lances from Luna. Stealth swarms launched from under Antarctic ice and punched through gravity tomb cores like needles through fruit. Asteroid drivers turned empty rock into planet-killing ammunition. The sky over Earth became a cathedral of fire. But it wasn't the scale that terrified the chamber most. It was the discipline. Every shot was precise. Every strike surgical. Weapons powerful enough to crack moons were threading through fleets without touching civilian corridors or retreat channels. Humanity had not built a frenzy. It had built judgment. And that was far more frightening. Chancellor Ithis backed away from the glass dome. "This arsenal violates every Concord treaty." Ilara didn't look at him. "Every treaty was written by species who assumed we'd always be the ones dying under them." A council aide ran to the upper dais. "Incoming encrypted traffic from Concord Defense." Ithis accepted it, listened for 3 seconds, then went white. Ilara noticed. "What is it?" He didn't answer. She stepped forward. "What is it?" One of his own guards spoke instead. "The outer Concord fleets are repositioning." "Toward the Helix Gate?" The guard hesitated. "Toward Earth." Of course they were. Of course. They had watched the Dominion stumble and now smelled opportunity, not rescue, acquisition. They were coming to seize the arsenal. The Ver delegate recovered enough to spit out what everyone else was thinking. "If humanity possesses this level of hidden force, you are now the greatest threat in known space." Ilara turned to him slowly. "Funny, you only discovered that after deciding our extinction was acceptable." He had no answer. Her console flashed red. Civilian casualty report. New Rotterdam Arcology. Shield collapse. Emergency shelters compromised. Multiple sectors buried. Micah Voss. Signal lost. Lanny Voss. Signal lost. The room blurred. No. No, no, no. Her chest seized with that strange, suffocating pain that didn't even feel emotional at first. Just physical. Like the body refusing reality before the mind could. She opened the casualty detail. A final audio packet had come through from Shelter Tube 9, time-stamped 48 seconds before collapse. Her hand shook as she played it. Static. People crying. Then Micah's voice, hoarse and distant. "Ellie, if this reaches you." A metal groan swallowed the rest. Then Lanny, small, trying not to sound scared. "Tell Grandpa I was brave." Ilara made a sound she would never forget hearing herself make. Not a sob, something lower, broken at the root. The chamber around her became irrelevant. She was back on the kitchen floor at 13, knees pulled to her chest, while Micah, 6 years old and feverish and stubborn, refused to go to the hospital because he was afraid of needles. Back when she promised him she'd always protect him. Back when promises still sounded possible. She bent over the console, pressing it to her forehead like that could somehow hold them there. A hand touched her shoulder. For 1 second, she almost believed it would be kindness. It was Chancellor Ithis. "Ambassador," he said softly, "stand down your defenses, and we may yet negotiate a managed transition." She looked up at him through tears she no longer cared to hide. "A managed transition?" "We cannot allow unilateral human supremacy." "My brother just died under an alien strike." "I regret your loss, but..." Her grief vanished so fast it frightened even her. She straightened. "You regret my loss?" His expression tightened. "Control yourself." "No," she said. "That's been humanity's problem. We have." Before he could move, Ilara stepped back toward the central command rail and opened a system-wide channel. Every warship in Earth's defense lattice responded. The room exploded in protest. "Human ambassador, you have no authorization to..." She overrode them. Her face appeared across every military and civilian feed still operational in the solar system. Behind her, the council chamber glowed in panic. "People of Earth," she said, voice shaking once before hardening. "This is Ambassador Ilara Voss. If you can hear me, then you're alive. Hold on to that. Hold on to each other." Damaged cities filled the screens. Shelters, smoke, children wrapped in emergency foil blankets, medics covered in ash. She swallowed. "The Concord has withdrawn support. The Dominion has declared extermination. And now others are moving to take control of what we unleashed to survive." Her eyes lifted. "But listen to me carefully. We are not opening this arsenal to rule anyone. We are opening it because our dead are watching. And because every child still breathing deserves a mourning." All across Earth, faces turned toward her. Soldiers in cracked helmets, teachers in flooded subways, a boy clutching a dog under shattered glass. Ilara entered the final escalation key. Across the solar system, dormant signatures lit up like constellations remembering their names. Then one more alert hit. "Unauthorized access attempt. Source, chamber lower tier."
Ilara spun. Human Defense Minister Cassian Rel was at the auxiliary console, frantically entering command strings. For a second, the betrayal didn't register because Cassian had been in her parents' house. He'd eaten Micah's birthday cake. He had hugged Lonnie the last time she visited Geneva. Then Ilara saw the Dominion cipher pulsing on his wrist. The chamber guards rushed him. Cassian pulled a sidearm and fired. A Concord aide fell screaming. Chaos detonated again. Ilara lunged over the console barrier just as Cassian sprinted toward the core relay. He was older than he used to be, heavier, but fear gave him speed. He shoved through a pair of diplomats and ran for the emergency lock. "Ilara!" he shouted without looking back. "You don't understand what you've done!" She chased him into the corridor beyond the chamber, alarms bleaching the walls red. "I understand enough," she yelled. He slapped the lock panel. The door began to close. Ilara threw herself through the narrowing gap and hit the ground hard inside the relay spine. Metal rang through her bones. Cassian aimed the pistol at her. His hand was shaking. "You should have surrendered," he said. She pushed herself up slowly. "You sold us out. I saved what could be saved. You gave them the moon ring." His face twisted.
The Concord promised protected relocation for key populations. Earth was never going to win this. Ilara stared at him. "You mean key people?" He didn't deny it. That hurt more than if he had. "We were supposed to survive," he said, almost pleading now. "A controlled handover, limited casualties. Order." She laughed once. It sounded almost cruel. "Tell that to the children buried under the Atlantic." For a second, shame crossed his face. Then self-preservation smothered it. He raised the gun. "If the Concord captures the arsenal, maybe this species still has a future." Ilara took a step closer. He fired. The shot ripped past her side, grazing her ribs in a burst of heat. She crashed into the wall, breath gone. Cassian moved forward, desperate now, aiming again. Then the relay door behind him opened. A maintenance worker stood there, small, middle-aged, terrified, wearing an emergency mask and holding a magnetic wrench. She took one look at the scene and swung anyway. The wrench cracked against Cassian's temple. He dropped hard. The woman stared at him, then at Ilara, horrified by what she'd just done. I'm sorry." Ilara pressed a hand to her bleeding side. "Don't be." The woman started crying. "My son's in Jakarta," she whispered. "Please tell me this means we're not abandoned." Ilara looked at her. At the grease on her sleeves, at the fear in her eyes, at the ordinary humanity of her. And suddenly, that was the entire war. Not empires, not treaties, not fleets. A mother somewhere hoping one more door would stay shut long enough for her child to live. Ilara reached past Cassian's unconscious body and opened the relay core manually. "Get to a shelter," she told the woman. "What about you?" Ilara looked at the pulsing neural chamber beyond the hatch, at the last thing her father had hidden. "I'm going to make sure they never ask if humans need allies again." Inside the relay core, the truth was waiting. The arsenal wasn't just hardware. It was linked to a memorial intelligence lattice seeded decades earlier with testimony archives, battlefield recordings, casualty histories, emergency languages, civilian priority codes. Every weapon system had been trained not on conquest simulations, but on loss, on hospital evacuations,
on genocide records, on famine maps, on the names of the dead. Humanity had taught its doomsday machine what mattered by feeding it every moment it had ever failed to protect someone. Ilara nearly collapsed when she understood. This was why the strikes were so precise. The arsenal didn't fight like a warrior. It fought like a grieving parent. A new alert flashed.
Concord Interception Fleet entering range. Transmission request. Chancellor Ithis. She accepted. His face appeared above the relay pool, tense and brittle. "You are forcing our hand," he said. "Deactivate the outer lattice or be declared a hostile power." Ilara, pale and bleeding, leaned against the console.
"You already declared us disposable."
"We are trying to preserve balance."
"Balance," she said. "You stood in a glass room and watched my world burn while calculating whether we were worth the fuel."
He went silent. Then, with bureaucratic calm so monstrous it almost impressed her, he said, "If you continue, the Concord will act." Ilara looked past his hologram to the tactical projection. Dominion remnants regrouping. Concord fleets advancing. Earth still under fire. 3 enemies now. She thought of Micah, of Lanny's little voice saying, "Tell Grandpa I was brave." Of her father dying alone because he knew one day his own people would be forced to become something the galaxy would hate. She closed her eyes. When she opened them, the softness was gone.
"Then act,"
she said. The battle that followed became legend in every language that survived it. Concord cruisers surged in, broadcasting peacekeeping codes while charging main batteries. Earth answered by blinding their sensors, cutting propulsion without killing crews, peeling weapons off hulls with magnetic shears from 500,000 miles away. The Dominion tried to slip behind the chaos and strike the Pacific shelters. Lunar rails erased them. A Concord dreadnought breached the orbital threshold above Cairo. A swarm launched from beneath the Sahara and wrapped around it like living wire, forcing surrender in 16 seconds. Over South America, the sky turned gold as solar mirrors caught a Dominion carrier trying to ram atmosphere. The ship became a sheet of fire and ash. And through all of it, Earth kept protecting retreat lanes. Even now. Even after betrayal. Even after loss. That broke something in the watching fleets. Because cruelty made sense to them. Mercy at this scale did not. One by one, Concord captains began cutting attack power. Then whole wings powered down. Then a message came from a VAIR commander on an open channel. "We were told humanity would become the monster," he said. "But monsters don't keep sparing us." Other ships followed. Retreat signals multiplied. The Dominion, seeing the line collapse, made one final move. Kale Varoon himself drove his command dreadnoughts straight toward Earth, all engines burning, core overloading. A suicide strike meant to crack the atmosphere and poison half the planet if he couldn't conquer it. Every screen in the solar system tracked it. Ilara's side was numb now. Blood had dried dark under her uniform. She stood before the relay core with the final manual control in her hand. One shot left in the deepest layer. One weapon her father had labeled only with 2 words. Last mercy. Yield unknown. Risk to Earth's magnetosphere. Severe. She whispered, "Dad, what did you build?" The system answered with one line. Localized space-time inversion. Use only if extinction is imminent. Kale's dreadnought crossed the red line. Ilara thought of the kitchen floor. Of Micah. Of Lonnie. Of the woman with the wrench. Of all the people who would never be named in council chambers, never shape treaties, never sit on thrones, but who made Earth worth every impossible thing it had hidden. Then she fired. Space bent, not exploded, bent. The stars around the dreadnought curved inward as if the universe itself had reached down and pinched reality shut. Kale Varun's flagship compressed to the size of a tear, glowed white, and disappeared without debris, without flame, without sound. Just gone. A clean absence where terror had been. The battle ended. Not slowly, all at once. Across every channel, engines powered down, guns cooled, warnings faded. For the first time in hours, Earth's sky stopped screaming. Elara stood alone in the relay core, trembling so hard she could barely stay upright. A new signal reached her console. Weak. Fragmented. Origin. Shelter Tube 9 emergency lifeboat. Her heart nearly stopped. She opened it. Static first, then coughing. Then Micah's voice. Broken, unbelieving, alive. Ellie? Elara slid to her knees. Micah? We made it out through the flood tunnel. He was crying and laughing at the same time. Lonnie's here. She's okay. She won't stop asking if you blew up the moon. A smaller voice shoved into the channel. I knew Grandpa was hiding something. Elara laughed, and the sound dissolved into sobbing so raw it emptied her. Lonnie whispered, suddenly serious. Aunt Ellie, did we win? Elara looked at Earth on the tactical projection. Cities burning, hospitals overflowing. Millions alive because millions had not given up. Her answer came out as a whisper. We're still here. That became the line history remembered. Not the weapons, not the fleets, not the impossible physics. We're still here. Hours later, the surviving members of the Concorde assembled again beneath the cracked glass dome. This time without ceremony, without arrogance, without pretending they still understood the shape of power. Elara walked back into the chamber bandaged and exhausted, every step a cost. No one laughed now. No one called Earth modest. Chancellor Ithis rose unsteadily. What does humanity intend to do? It was the question behind all the fear. Would Earth rule? Would it punish? Would it become exactly what everyone had always feared under their polite smiles? Elara stood where her father once had. Nothing, she said. The chamber shifted in confusion. We intend nothing, she repeated. We will bury the arsenal again. We will mourn our dead. We will rebuild our cities. And we will remember exactly who stood with us and who stepped aside to watch. No one moved. No one breathed. Then she gave them the truth they had earned. We did want allies. We still do. But allies are not people who circle your grave deciding what to inherit. If you want peace with Earth, come unarmed. Come honest. Or don't come at all. She turned to leave. At the doors, she stopped. Without looking back, she said the words that would haunt admirals, politicians, and tyrants for generations. You were only alive tonight because humanity still preferred mercy. Then she walked out beneath a sky the galaxy would never underestimate again. And somewhere under that wounded sky, a little girl named Lonnie looked up through shelter glass, saw the silent stars, and smiled at the thought that the universe had finally learned the one lesson humans had paid for in blood. The gentlest hands often hide the sharpest blades. So tell me, if you had been in that chamber when Earth opened its arsenal, would you have called humanity a monster? Or the last good thing standing between the stars and extinction?